You guys ready to talk about Star Wars again?
To you.
Hello, welcome to the HolmFront. I am Tyler, your host, and to my right, as always, is my overly artistic friend Mitch. Mitch,
Hi.
welcome. Here we go again.
I sounded disappointed, but I'm
You
actually
did.
not disappointed.
Are you?
No, not
Okay.
at all.
All right.
Not with this, but it's another Star Wars thing once again.
This whole show is just going to be about Star Wars eventually. That's all it's going to be.
Just be Star Wars
Just
commentators.
Star Wars. Speaking of which,
I feel
went,
like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I went and saw Revenge of the Sith, re-released in theaters.
Oh, do you have a good time?
Great. Yeah.
Do you even like that movie?
No, but it's still great. It's good to see it in theaters.
Yeah. Yeah, it is it's a good crowd pleaser movie.
Yeah. Anyway, so you watched something recently that I begged you to see.
Yeah, at some point we're gonna have to turn the tables and then talk about nothing but Star Trek for like
I'm okay with
a
that.
month and a half.
I'm okay with that.
All this Star Wars stuff you dragged me through. But we did watch Andor, and so it's our review of the whole show, which I think is better than doing like episode by
season.
episode.
First season.
Just season 1, and then we'll do season 2, I think, because I think that's actually airing now. But yeah, we watched Andor, and like everyone says, it's a really good sci-fi espionage show.
I love how you're like, it's good. Good?
Well, it's so weird because it's associated with a brand that's so damaged beyond repair. And then this just sticks out. And the thing is this would always stick out because it's not really like the original Star Wars movies either. So it's not really faithful to the original movies. It's not faithful to the new Disney crap because all the new Disney stuff is pretty much awful universally. Like, there's like a few redeemable merits, but like, if you like it, it's because you're just like putting that energy yourself into it. Or like, I'll make myself like certain elements of this. It's not because it's like really going to hold up under scrutiny. In 20 years, nobody's going to remember any of that crap. But this show is like, it's just a whole league of its own, and it just has the Star Wars branding, which it kind of has to have because of like the fact that it's about like the rebels and stuff. I mean, I guess you could remove some of that and then it would stand on its own, but then like it's just odd.
Yeah.
Very odd, but very good show. There's my review. Go watch it. It's great.
Hey, yo. That's our pre-spoiler review right
I recommend it
there.
to everyone, whether you like Star Wars or not. It's just a great show.
Yeah. So a couple of qualifiers right off the bat. So one of the things you said to me that I thought was hilarious, because we were watching it kind of, I don't know, like 2 or 3 episodes at a time when you were here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, screw it. I'm just going to send you home with it. I just gave you the episodes. And then you restarted it to start watching with your mom.
I did, yes.
And then I think that's when it settled in for you. You're like, this is a good show.
Well, I was in disbelief. It was so hard to reconcile. I'm like, Disney produced this? They said okay on this project?
Yeah, they said yeah?
I was like, but it's good. Why would they do that? There's been so many bad Star
Really
Wars
bad.
shows.
Yeah.
Just awful stuff. You don't even have to watch them. You see like a clip or two. I mean, even the ones that seem like they're doing okay, like that new one that we were reviewing, the Skeleton Crew or whatever.
Yeah.
Even that got like canceled and stuff. And it's not that it was like a bad show, but it was just like this, like the enthusiasm just is not there for Star Wars.
No, it's not.
This really battered franchise. And then you go back to this and you're like, well, this is engaging. This is entertaining.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why it's so weird is that everyone's banking on this one to fail, right? Because it's based on a secondary character in an offshoot movie
Mm-hmm.
that is dealing with a random little issue that a few people brought up, but not many people cared about from the
Right.
original trilogy.
Yeah.
So it's like,
It could not be
Oh,
more removed.
it's so removed. It's like
Yeah.
way down the list. So everybody was talking about it like, why would I want to watch a show about Andor?
Yeah, of all the
Just don't
characters.
care. I
Mhm.
don't care about that. So the amount of apathy that this thing inspired before it existed, but then it came around, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna prove myself. Tony Gilroy was like, I got it. I got this. Yeah, it was weird. So I watched this the first time, and I was like,
It takes a while
how does this
because you're trying to slot it
again? Yeah,
in.
you keep asking, how did it make it? It like slipped in. It was like, made it. Oh, thank God, I got through the lines.
Right,
It like
like
blew through the blockade or Phantom
yeah.
Menace or something.
Yeah, basically.
Like, whoa, made it through the empire there.
Right, because like the Disney executive that I know would have looked at this and been like, "Oh my gosh, like it's just so weighty. There's so much dialogue. There's not
There's
enough like
depth in here.
there's
Get it
depth.
out.
It just needs to be, heroes fighting villains, and you're making the rebels look like they're morally ambiguous. That's no good. Can't have that. It's like,
Ridiculous.
yeah, and then it just, yeah, it worked.
Yeah, so the qualifiers here. Oh, that was what you came up and said. You're like, this has no business being as good as it is.
No,
I was like, nah, that's a
none.
great point. That's a great point for multiple different reasons.
Thanks.
Um, the other thing that you kind of have to qualify is that this can't exist outside of Star Wars. Like it would have a hard time
It would be harder.
standing on its own.
It'd be much harder, yeah, because you'd have to make some changes to it. You could
Right.
do like a sci-fi rebel thing, but it is
Well, you'd have
better
to make
in
it simpler. It couldn't be as deep as this one because this one connects to
exactly.
something
Yeah.
that you already have a bunch of knowledge about.
Mm-hmm.
But it also arguably doesn't quite belong where it is.
No. It's not shot like classic Star Wars, but it's not shot like the new stuff either
Nope.
because it looks a lot better than those. So it's
The
just in
music is
this.
all off.
The music is not like John Williams at all. It's nothing like Star Wars.
It's
It doesn't
nothing like
fit.
the hero's journey. It doesn't have like your
Uh-uh.
idealistic heroes. I mean, it does
Nope.
have idealistic people in it, which we will get
It's
into.
not
'Cause
fantasy.
it's also it's not fantasy.
It's not fantasy at all. So yeah, it just doesn't fit. But I mean, I'll take it.
Whatever. Great show. So I was excited that I got it because I was watching through and I was like, man, it it's not quite because like you look at the formula of Star Wars, specifically when the first 6 films, and each one builds on the previous one,
Mm-hmm.
even though it went backwards. It builds on the previous one where it's like, okay, what can we add in that's a little extra? And I think the 2 criteria that he was looking at were the marketing criteria, obviously. What can I sell outside the film? Double-bladed lightsaber. Obviously, you can sell that. A Darth Maul
Sure.
figurine, you can sell that. The droids,
Uh-huh.
you could sell that. Like, so these are all things that you got to put in. But then also he wants to build the world with that, right? So Darth Maul,
Okay.
even though he's marketable, he is a cool character that fits in the universe.
Yes.
Different types
Yeah,
of ships.
yeah.
You get the Y-wings now that are bombers, and they're different types than the X-wings
Okay.
from before.
Yeah.
So then you look at the Disney stuff, and they don't really understand how to do that at all. They're like, well,
Yeah, it's like toy first, and then you shoehorn it into something like Baby Yoda.
It doesn't fit both. It's
Yeah.
either derivative. Well, no, it's all derivative because they're like, well, let's take the stormtroopers and make them red. Let's take Yoda and make him with a
baby.
He's got like an anime style to him. He's got big eyes, and let's take Boba Fett and make him silver, kind of like Jango Fett, but different.
But different.
And so they don't have anything that's like super inspiring until you get to Rogue One. Rogue One seemed like they're like, okay, we're gonna reference old stuff, but also we're gonna put some original stuff. So they had the B-wing in there. They had some new characters in there that actually looked pretty cool. That didn't have a huge part necessarily, but like the guys around Saw
Oh,
Gerrera,
Yeah.
they were
yeah.
pretty interesting looking. Weapons were cool in there. So like, it seemed like they were going back more to the formula. And then Andor, which is based off of that, goes, you know what? Yeah, we can do some of that, I guess. But I'm gonna tell this story. And it's like,
Storytelling is the number one thing that
Yeah,
I'm concerned with.
which
and
is
we're like,
great. Don't get me wrong, but again, it doesn't quite fit
Mhm.
the formula.
Yeah.
So while it is good, it's just removed. It's not. It's hard to square in your brain like this belongs with A New Hope somehow. Exactly. When
Well,
you
yeah,
say
'cause
that, you're like, not really. No.
yeah, because like you have to attach it to all these other properties. I mean, to be fair, it does connect the best with the Rogue One movie,
Yes.
and to be fair, that movie is probably the best that Disney has since Disney has owned Star Wars. That's probably the best one.
Except Solo, maybe.
Sure. Um. So like, even though that movie went through like that weird like reshoot fiasco that it had to go through, but that's the whole thing is like that movie got like flat out attacked. Like the Disney executives asked them to reshoot like it was like 96, 98% of that movie or something like that. It was like the report came out and they're like, well, it's too much like a war movie. And so what happened was is they couldn't use the composer they were going to use because scheduling conflicts now. You got to go back and
We'll never
reshoot
forgive them
things.
for that. There's an
No.
Alexander Desplat
Star Wars
Star
score
Wars
that would have been
score
amazing
that
and we don't get to have it.
we'll never hear.
It's like we got the Desplat Harry Potter score, so I'll have to
We'll deal.
make my peace with that. But like, it's that movie feels like it has all these holes in it, and like every time I watch it, I'm just like, it just feels like there was something else here. There's like a bigger thing going on
That's one
that
that
we're
didn't
not
quite
invested
make
in.
it past the blockade.
Right? It did,
It
but
got
see,
kinda
but
beat
why
up.
would this then? Is the question?
Because
It's
that
like,
one took the brunt of it.
I guess
They're
so.
like,
That
okay,
makes
you know
sense.
what? Rogue One, despite all the hardships we put it through, still did the best out of all these movies.
Did it actually? I
It's
don't
the
think
most
so.
well received, yes.
Critically, but I'm not about the mullahs.
I don't know about the money. I have not looked up those figures.
Okay.
But most
The first one has to be Force Awakens 7. Now, I bet you that had the most money
probably.
because that's when nobody knew it was going to be, crap.
Well, it may. I mean, I know at least made $1 billion. I don't think Rogue One came close to that, but it has
No.
aged better.
Nobody remembers that movie, by the way.
Which
You're the
one?
only person I ever talked to who knows what Rogue One is. Every time I mention that movie to someone, they're like, "What's that?" They have no clue that
You
it
must
even
talk
exists.
to a lot of people that aren't Star Wars fans, because most people that I talk to that like Star Wars are like Rogue One's the best thing that Disney's done.
Well,
Hands down.
I mean, most people aren't Star Wars fans.
Fair, fair enough. I guess it's a shrinking market these days. So, Andor, considering it's based on someone from the film that did the best within, like, aged the best, I guess,
Yeah.
within that community, they're like, well, I guess we'll just allow this to have a little bit more freedom. Thank God.
Yeah. And then now they're doing the season 2, and they had that awful trailer. And I know like people got mad at us or whatever because it was like downvoted that video we did. But screw you, it was a bad trailer. I didn't say the show was bad. The show is probably going to be great.
We qualified it pretty well, I thought. I was like, no, the show is really good. I don't know why they're presenting it this way.
Yeah.
This is a bad representation of what the show, at least for the first season, I imagine the second season is going to be like, is about.
Right.
It didn't make any sense. It was like, this is Guardians of the Galaxy trailer in a sci-fi espionage show. But okay, sure. Anyway, so Andor season 1.
Okay, so you should go over the premise of the show really quick so everybody's up to speed.
Okay, so I'll just read this one so I keep it kind of succinct. It's about the Empire occupation and what that would actually look like in a Star Wars universe, politically and personally, and that's told through one character and his eventually shady morality.
That's a pretty good summation.
Thanks. So it's very similar along the lines of like World War II occupation and kind of what politically it would look like if you worked against them.
Yeah, it takes like the inspiration that Lucas had for the Empire and then
just made it really overt.
Pulls it back down to reality because the Empire does some like their overreach is very present in this, which makes them great villains because they'll like pull somebody over and they'll be like, "Oh, you're in a sector you're not supposed to be in." It's like, "Oh, sorry, I just got lost." And it's like, "All right, well,
we're gonna check your papers."
Yeah, we're checking your papers. So they run his code and they're like, "Yeah, he's clear." And he's like, "Well, pull him over anyways. We could use the practice or whatever." It's like you can't just pull somebody over, but that's the kind of empire that they're in. So it's great seeing them just be just flat out evil to everybody, just like picking on people. People get murdered by stormtroopers and stuff, and it's like, whatever. There's no law that like constrains them. It's just massive government overreach.
It's interesting to see what kind of apathy that type of environment would create, and that's what the show embodies. Is under this systematic control that these guys have, what would eventually that inspire? So you have like the bureaucratic side of it. You have the like administrative side of it, I guess. Where basically they're all just like, well, we got a quota, but that makes a bunch of paperwork. I don't really feel like doing that. And then
Yeah.
stuff slips through the cracks because of the apathy for some of these characters. But also, some of these characters are so devoted that nothing slips through the cracks, but they have to fight all the apathy to get to it. And so you
Like
have
within their own ranks, the
exactly,
Empire. Yeah.
and these are the Empire side, and then you have
Well,
the Rebel side, and
when there's apathy there too, because a lot of people don't want to be involved. It's dangerous.
well, they know
and
that
I'll
if
just
they
keep my
start
head
a
down.
fight, they might lose, and that means death, and
Right.
whatever else that entails, the Empire, because they have the power. So
And then there's others who are like, well, we can't just let them carry on like this. It's wrong. We
yeah,
can have a better world. The only way we're going to get that is if we fight and make that sacrifice. So yeah, you have, and that's the whole thing that makes it great is like you get to see the rebels and the Empire and the differences between them in terms of like how, like you said, there's certain members of both sides who are like more impassioned than others, and that creates like division among their own ranks. And so they don't feel like just the Empire doesn't come across as just, the kind of one note image they were in the original movies. Like in this, you see people like working at their desks, like eating like blue ramen noodles and stuff like that.
guy goes home to his mom to eat cereal.
Okay, yeah, that's a big complaint I have with this freaking show. What is with all these Star Wars properties and weird colored milk? It's like blue or green. It's like it's been like purple and orange. I'm like, what's wrong with everyone? Why can't milk just be what it is?
No.
It's like, no, it's got to be like some weird color. It's like you're just putting dye in milk. Why? It's just milk.
I love it.
You're putting it in cereal. I know what color milk is. Like,
you
but
just
it's
watch-
space milk.
You watch The Last Jedi and you'll understand why.
That's what I'm saying. Like, because there it was green. In this show, it's blue. There was like another show. I can't remember which one it was, but they had like a different color of milk too.
Well, New Hope started it.
Oh, yeah. What color is his milk?
I think that one's blue.
His is blue?
Yeah.
So so
Space
maybe
milk. He pours
Wait a
it
minute,
in the
but
very first episode.
his was like a lighter blue, was it not?
something like that. I don't remember.
Because this was
color.
like a dark blue.
We're gonna compare shades. What's the color code?
Oh,
for The Last Jedi milk.
it was Skeleton Crew. They had a weird colored milk.
Nobody cares.
That
about
was like
show.
some bluish purple thing, I think, if I remember
Nobody
right.
cares. Nobody cares.
But seriously, like what is with the milk? Just leave it alone.
Let milk be milk. Make milk milk again. But MMA. I'm gonna get a shirt. Okay, so let's go over what did
Okay.
you like about this show.
Well, I like that it wasn't garbage.
I love that that's the standard for Star Wars now. It's like, am I gonna hate it or not hate it?
No, but for real, I really liked. I liked the look of it. I thought it was a lot better than the other ones. Like it just had such a grounded feel to it. And that's like in part like just the way it's shot. But I was like watching someone was like talking about like how they kind of made the visuals come together. And I guess they shot a lot of stuff like on location. And then what they would do is they would like add in the background, which you're thinking to yourself like, okay, what's novel about that? Well, it's novel because in a lot of other Star Wars properties, including the prequels, it's just like green screen up to wazoo. And like your mind just knows that it's fake. And so this was like a nice kind of return to just like, it's like just because you're sci-fi doesn't mean there's nothing realistic about your world. Like you still have streets and you still have buildings. You know what I
You're
mean?
gonna still have realistic things that look like
Yeah.
they could belong in a sci-fi universe. Yeah, so when you look at Mandalorian, they use a thing called the volume,
Okay.
which is essentially a big TV screen that's curved. So essentially what they do is they build a set against the curved TV screen. So if you put him in a desert setting or something, they'll build the bike that he's sitting on and then the desert kind of sand portion underneath him. So it looks like he's kind of got that environment and get the lighting and stuff. And then behind him, they'll have the actual moving background. So it's almost like rear projection, what they used to do, classic style.
Yeah, like King Kong stuff.
But it also provides this element where it's a little bit disconnected. And you can kind of tell it's not perfected yet. Also, the actor seems a little bit disconnected because he's not actually in the environment. So he's got to act that out a little bit. So it's taking a little bit more effort. This one, yeah, they brought him to those environments or they created environments based on real things.
Yeah.
So, like, it was just something that we as a human would recognize and be able to place in reality.
Yeah.
So it looks like a lot more aesthetically grounded rather than something so far-fetched or futuristic or sci-fi-esque.
Yeah, and then they dress it up with those little details too, like the guy eating ramen, or like there's one scene where they're just like the Empire is just like picking up people off the streets and sending them out to work in a concentration camp,
Yeah,
basically.
that was funny. Andor's just walking one day,
Yeah, he
and
just
the
takes a
droid
walk.
he just happens to be in the vicinity of someone running away from somebody, and the droid grabs him. He's like, "What were you doing?" He's like,
Yeah.
"I'm just going to the bank." He's like, "No, you're part of this whatever, this bank robbery."
You were suspicious, yeah.
Yep.
So they just like
Just shipped him off.
straight up arrest him and they give him like 5 years or something like that. And like the woman who like signs off on his sentencing or whatever, she's just like cracking walnuts or something, like popping those. And so it's like just a nice like touch of,
Realism.
yeah, it's like she's working at a DMV kind of job, just like, all right, whatever,
'Cause she
get
acts
out of
the same
here.
too. He's like, "I didn't do anything." She's like, "Take it up with the judge."
Yeah, take it up with the
Ships-
Emperor, get out of here.
Ships him
It's like,
off.
who's gonna get a chance to talk to the Emperor?
Andor, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, so like I like that everything that kind of made it grounded, and like I mean, do preface like the things I like about it is also the things that like I don't like about it because it makes it less like the originals.
Right.
But like just as a story, I liked it. It made it more, real, easier to connect with.
Yeah. So when you're looking at story progression, especially within like a fantasy or sci-fi type setting, you want to build your world in a slowly progressive way. So you start with something a lot more grounded that people will be able to
Yeah.
connect with. So you're gonna have a character, they're called a fish out of water character. So this is the character to whom everyone can explain things and it feels natural in the universe, so that the reader
Yeah.
or the watcher can understand with you. So like Luke was a fish out of water in the original, and that way Obi-Wan can like build the world for the audience to a character in universe that makes sense.
Or like Hagrid to Harry in Harry Potter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now, once you've established that, though, once you get like 2 or 3 down the road, let's take Harry Potter for example. When he's 2 or 3 movies in, or 2 or 3 books in, you know Hogwarts, you know Voldemort, you know like what's
Right.
going on in the external, and now you can start building up the details. Now you can throw extra spells in there, you can throw extra characters, you can throw extra type of species in there. These are things that you can slowly progress because you don't want to like flood someone with a bunch of information that's just going to be like overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that this show does is Andor is extremely immersive. For one, like we were saying, aesthetically it looks very different, but it also looks extremely grounded. But the world itself is extremely rich. So now you have the occupied empire as they exist, and then you have everybody trying to live in that. So he does like 5 or 6 different cultures that exist. And you have to make those cultures all look realistic and natural as well.
Mm-hmm.
But those all exist in the universe setting, or in the empire setting, I should say. So now they are trying to live their normal lives, but also under occupation. Then that's going to look different than it would if it wasn't under empire occupation. So with
Right.
the amount of input that this show is giving you, this is not a standard progression that Star Wars has reached. Star Wars is a traditional hero's journey. And then when you have the first 3 films, the episode 1, 2, and 3, now you have the like reverse hero's journey where Anakin's turning to the dark side. So you have kind of this mirror image. And then you have, I guess you could do Rogue One. It's just kind of an offshoot, but they kind of build a little bit. They have some extra planets in there, some new ships and stuff. But they're not doing much to like expand the universe any further.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of, it's working on what exists already.
Yes.
Because 7, 8, 9 don't build either. So this one is almost like, he's like, look, you guys don't have any kind of step building process for this universe. So you don't really have a way of making this fit. So I'm just going to create it as I have it in my head. And he just built it. So it's a lot of sensory input. It's a lot of narrative input, but you will understand it given the context of the movies that you know.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's the best reason or justification you could have for making something a TV show as opposed to a movie.
Right.
Is world building. Because that's the problem.
Because you got the space and the time.
Right. It's the double-edged sword of the prequels, because the prequels are not very good Star Wars movies, and they're not very good movies. But they're great at building up the world of Star Wars. They actually add a lot of interesting lore.
Yes.
Some of it works, some of it not so much, but most of it is like pretty well appreciated just for what it is. And this is kind of like doing that, but it's in a format that's appropriate for it. And when it does build on it, it doesn't build lore details like, how many chlorians work or something like that. It builds details like, well, look at how, if you're lower on the tier of the empire, you can easily lose your job and get that revoked, and they can like be backstabbing each other because they really only care about their results. Or like there's this great character who runs like this, they're like this organization or this like subdivision that's supposed to like find terrorist groups against them and like
Right.
squelch them out. So they're kind of like espionage or like the KGB, something like that. And this guy who runs it, he's like, a lot of them are like, okay, we got to go buy the book. And then one character starts to deviate that, and she's like, well, okay, I broke a rule, but I got this result. And he's like, but that's interesting. Let's keep that up. And he's like, look, she just put everybody else to shame here in this room. And that was like an interesting twist because you're like, wow, so he doesn't care if the rules are being followed at all.
Because cares about results.
Yeah, he cares about the results. And that was a great way to show what the Empire would actually be like and what it would actually turn into.
Or what type of leaders it would inspire.
Exactly, yeah. And like the best part about that is like after this conversation, she kind of like has this like battle, or this like verbal word battle with someone else who's like, well, you're not following the rules, so you should get punished for that. And she's like, yeah, but I got the result. And then afterwards, the guy in charge tells her, he's like, well played, watch your back.
Yeah, he kind of just like, you're on your own. But hey, got what I got what I needed from you. So at this point,
right,
bring more.
Mm-hmm.
But also, people are going to be after you for doing this.
Yeah,
she's stepping on toes because she feels like her ambition is being inhibited by these other characters.
Right.
So she just supersedes them, even though she's not supposed to.
Right.
And basically pulls it out in front of her both of their higher ups, and that's this guy, I forget his name, but
yeah,
she pulls that out and says, "Hey, look what I did, and this is what I got, even though he tried to stop me."
Mm-hmm.
So now she's calling that guy out because she has no other choice, but she wants this result. So now the guy is obviously congratulating her, but knowing he understands what
mm-hmm.
this empire can do. So he's like, well,
Yeah.
these people, they will stab you in the back.
Right.
I'm going to acknowledge that. I'm not going to help you. But
Right.
just remember that you'll get stabbed in the back if you keep it up.
But even the line too, when he says, well played, that's such an interesting way to say the compliment, because he didn't say good work. He's saying well played. He's like, oh, you're learning the game. This
Right.
is how it actually is played. And so many of those people I'm talking to in that room are just these grunts who can't get it out of their head.
Right,
So
they
like,
sit in the box. She was the one that got out of the box. And
right.
everyone's upset because she's, you're supposed to stay in here.
Right. And he's like, but they're trapped in the box. He's like, you figured out a way out, so you have promise. But that also means you're going to make more enemies. So I'm just giving you a little tip here because you're an effective use for the Empire. And if I can promote you down the road, that will also benefit me. So, like, I need new recruits, so to speak, for like higher level positions. But you have to make
it to the finish line.
So I'm keeping an eye, but like, I'm not actually going to back you up because the person I really want to recruit won't get caught. Yeah. So I'm just letting you know, don't get pigeonholed by some of these guys with their bookkeeping or with whatever kind of sabotaging they're going to get up to.
He also is playing the game though.
Exactly.
Because if he takes her side, then he makes enemies as well. But if he's just an objective observer who's like, well, she got the best of you, so what are you going to do about it?
Right. And then I'm just setting the parameter for the rules of the game.
Right. So now the guy's not mad at his superior. He's mad at his colleague.
Right.
So now the superior's just like, whoever gets to me first can have this promotion. So you have a chance if you want to jump out of the box.
Yeah. It's like, look how much interesting dialogue just from like one scene in this show.
Well done. Well played, as they say.
That's like my favorite character too, is Deidre. She's just this like evil Imperial worker, and like all she cares is like serving the Empire and like going up the ranks. I'm like, this is awesome. You just get to see someone who's just like, I don't care about anybody else. And she's just like ruthless, right? She even has like evil like Shakespearean monologues that she gives later. I'm like, what kind of show is this?
Doesn't belong.
So weird.
So there's an interesting contrast between Deidre and then I forget the guy's name, but One of them is ambition embodied, right? And that's
Yeah.
Deidre. All she knows is I want to get to the top. I don't care
Mhm.
what it takes or who I have to kill for it.
Right.
I'm getting there. And then there's the character that's like infatuated with her. And he is
That's right.
idealism embodied
Yes.
because he's just idealistically aligned with the Empire. Now he takes all the forms that she does and is like, well, I tailored my suit and made it a little custom because I want it to look this way. And like, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
how I want to sing my praises to the Empire.
Right.
But the Empire is right. And therefore, I will do whatever it takes to try and prove that and to take down anyone who disagrees. And he's like, so his I guess ambition, his idealism gets him in trouble. But then he sees her and she's like the beacon. He's like, she is what everything I want to be. She embodies the Empire. I
Like a
want to
true
worship at
Empire
her feet.
believer.
Exactly. So he like becomes infatuated.
Yeah, he
And
becomes like a puppy dog following her around.
it's so good.
There's
Yeah.
such a strange dynamic.
Their relationship's the best in the show. It's
And
so
like
funny.
even his like a sidekick or whatever, he gets this like, because he's just, I mean, he's just like, he's kind of detective-y, but you know, he's low tier, right? He's way lower on the food chain than Deidre is. So
Yeah, Deidre's like SS head material,
right.
and he's just like this random.
Yeah, he's just kind of supposed to inspect stuff. I mean, he's
Right.
never done like a real like mission, boots on the ground kind of thing. So like he's trying to put together information for a case to hunt down a rebel, and this other guy comes along and he's just like emphatic for the Empire.
He's almost like a, I don't know, butt kisser or something. Like he's
Yeah.
just there to be like, you know what? I'm gonna look good in front of the superior, so I'm just gonna make him feel good about himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he just follows it.
He's
He just
overly
plays.
enthusiastic and
Yeah, he just gives him all the things he wants to hear, and then he's like, "We should go down to the planet, and you know, we should investigate and bring that person in for questioning." And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't know. That's superseding like what we're supposed to do." And he's like, "Well, we're getting too lazy, you know." He's
Yep.
like, as an empire, he's like, you know, what does he say is like the best? He's like,
best way
the
to
best.
keep a knife sharp is to use it or
Yeah,
something.
the best way to sharpen a knife is to use it. It's like, whoa, where did that line of dialogue come from? That's awesome.
Tony Gilroy.
Jeez. And so they do that mission. This is pretty early on in the show. And then he's all fish out of water. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to command anybody.
None of these guys. It's just a basic squad of like, I don't know, between 6 and 10 people that go down to find this guy that they're after. And it seems like none of them had done this before.
Right.
They're like, I'm really scared. We could very easily turn these tides against us. So we need to tread lightly. But at the same time, we really want to get in there and get our hands dirty.
Yeah.
So they're trying to like find that line. And then they get in way over their heads.
Yeah.
And both of them don't understand how to deal with a kinetic situation. So then everything just goes to hell. Well, there's explosions and people are shooting at us and there's noises and no one wants us here. We got to go.
But it's perfect, like, because it fits the characters. It's like they work for the Empire, but they're newbies and they don't really know how to handle this situation.
But this is
exactly.
talking about the hierarchy of the Empire. And once this organization, once this, I don't know, this head becomes too big,
Yeah.
eventually, like, it's going to spread out into where you're not able to control everything anymore. So
Mhm.
whomever built this thing originally is not going to be able to control every aspect of it. So it's going to start to decay as it goes further down the line.
Right, exactly.
And this character, he's overly ambitious, but at the same time, he doesn't really know what he's doing. He just knows
Yeah.
that this is something that I find important, and I think that this is gonna add to the Empire. So I'm gonna do it. And he just latches on and he just holds so tightly because to him, like, this has to be true. I have to, like, this has to matter. And so he overreaches inevitably and then causes problems.
But it's good to see that it's a reflection of character, and then, like you're saying, a larger reflection of like the Empire system itself. Like it's too big to even control and manage itself.
Exactly.
Right. So it's kind of, it works on both levels, and it makes for a more engaging storyline because it's reflective through these entertaining characters. Yeah, and then there's also, like, you know, we're talking about the Empire, but the flip side of this, of course, is the rebels.
Right.
Who I don't know how much I've said it really on this show before, but I don't like the rebels typically. they're so boring. They're so uninteresting. Everyone's always like rebels. I'm like, who cares about the stupid rebels? The Jedi are the interesting stuff.
Right.
But in this, the rebels are interesting because they're headed up by a really morally ambiguous leader, and they're really fragmented. And the way they recruit their people is kind of this guessing game of how loyal they actually are to the cause, because they really need cause loyalty. If they don't have that, they run the risk of that person betraying them
Well, they also
or
need
selling them out.
a cause, and I think that's what the show's about, is figuring out what the cause is. Because yes, they are
Oh yeah.
anti-empire, but they're not really for anything. It's more
Yeah.
of just we don't want someone above our head. So you're gonna have a bunch of random groups of fanatics, and that's why I thought Saw Gerrera had more justification in the show,
Mm.
because he was just a fanatic. And
Yeah, I
there's
see.
only
I
going to
see.
be so many people that are flocking to a fanatic,
Right.
because they're like, well, yeah, I may dislike the Empire, but I'm not going to accept that guy's methods.
Right.
So he's just kind of this nut job out in the fringes, but he's
Mhm.
successful,
Yeah.
because a fanatic will attract a crowd,
Right.
and they will be successful to some extent because they're willing to go to some extents that others won't. So he kind of exists in this fringe realm of like rebellion, but not something organized.
Yeah.
It's just whatever he can accomplish with the following that he builds.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
characters will find him useful, but because he's so idealistically driven, he might not agree with everybody that wants to come in and use him, because he doesn't
Mm.
want to be just a gun. He actually has goals. And that's why he butts heads with Luthen at some point, is like
Luthen being the head of the building Rebel Alliance, played by, was it Skarsgård?
Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you pronounce his first name, but yes.
He was the Baron in Dune.
Yeah. And also for us, he was in King Arthur. He was the main antagonist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's like a method actor, isn't he? Because I think when he was in King Arthur, I think my brother-in-law was telling me how he just walked around like in costume and he just spoke in that.
Oh, did he? That's awesome.
In his voice. So he was just
He's
like, what do you want?
He's a phenomenal actor.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And he nailed this role. That was probably my favorite character in the show, was Luthen. Because Luthen embodied what it would take to create a rebellion. Because when you see someone like Luke is, he's also idealistic, but he's got that innocence about him. He hasn't had to delve down and get his hands dirty necessarily to become who he becomes.
Mhm.
He's just inspired by those who did get their hands dirty in order to have the root, essentially, to go face Vader. Because he has the space to do that. He's like,
that makes sense.
I'm the good versus evil. I don't have to do something evil to do that. I just have to face the evil and say no. Whereas
Right.
Luthen is someone who's like, there's so much apathy out here that I've got to use some methods. And there's a fantastic speech in the film or in the show where he's talking about, I'm forced to use the tools that my enemy uses. I have to basically be almost nondescript from them in order to defeat them.
Mhm.
He's like, so I essentially have to destroy my moral character, or what I believe to be my moral character, in order to build something that will fight against it. But then how far do you push that before you're just what they are on the opposite end?
Right.
And so it's like, well, how much good are you going to do at the end of the day if what you do just builds into something that mirrors it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like this moral conundrum. And I liked how you don't like see it play out, but you hear about how he basically is willing to let like his own troops, like good people that he trusts, just flat out die.
Right.
Because he knows what that buys him is security from the Empire to launch his next attack down the road. It's the long game. And so it's this interesting situation where you're like, man, like that's pretty harsh. Like, don't you think you need to back up your people? And he's like, but if I do that, I give up on my mole. They're going to find them.
Yep.
And I need that spy in their ranks for the larger play that puts them in the ground for good down the road. So yeah, I really liked his character as well. I thought he was a really good like representation of how the rebels are leaving or transitioning from that fanaticism and frustration into actually like a cohesive driving
Direction.
force.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other character who balances him out is, I can never remember the name, but it's just Mothra to me, like from
Mothra. Yep, that's her name. Nailed it. Not Mon Mothma, it's Mothra.
It's just the Godzilla reference in me. Anyways, Mothra lady, she's like this senator politician. Also, by the way, I just loved her costumes and
Oh,
like the
yeah.
production design. And like I love how every time it cross cuts to like her in this like bougie like apartment and everyone's like coming over for like nice dinners and they're just like, oh. And they're just
People are
these
dying.
rich, yeah. And then it
it's
cuts to
evil.
like these rebels like fighting for their lives and stuff like that.
I have to figure out how to fund this. So please come to my fancy dinner. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, put this like disgusting weird worm in my drink, and then it like makes it fizzle or whatever, and you're like, ugh. They're just like so like it's like eating
This
snails or
posh
something.
society.
Yeah, exactly. So like her character actually I wanted more from. I felt like there's too many instances where she's like trying to like say a speech or something, and then it's like the circumstances just kind of thwart her, and I was like, man, you're just kind of like here for the ride for the most part. Like I wanted her to have more agency, but nevertheless, like she's not like maybe the main focus necessarily, and she's mostly there to fund Lutheran's projects. And it is interesting when about at some point she starts to catch on like how serious this stuff is and how much it's going to come back to haunt her. And when that happens, she's upset about it. And then Lutheran points out, he's like, look, you knew this stuff. You knew. You just weren't acknowledging it to yourself. Like, you understand what these things actually mean, though.
Yeah.
You're not really mad at me. You're mad at yourself for not really taking it seriously like you should have been doing.
Right.
And it was an interesting way of like, because his vision about this rebel system is crystal clear. He understands it.
Well, he knows how dirty he's going to have to get for it.
Right.
She may know, but she doesn't like to acknowledge it.
Exactly.
She has
yeah.
that like very posh mindset of like, well, I didn't know we were gonna go that far. Or he's like, yeah, what did you think we're gonna have to do for this?
Right.
Like, don't get mad at me.
Yeah.
You're either on board or you're not. Like,
Right.
you got to be on board wherever the ship goes.
Right. Exactly.
Otherwise, get off.
Yeah.
And if you get off, I'm probably gonna have to kill you. So
Yeah.
stay on the boat.
Too late to stay on the boat. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so all the like interesting like I mean, they even have there's this great sequence, I don't want to spoil too much, but you have a character who's like a rebel and they have like a full-on sad backstory and everything for why they hate the Empire. And then it turns out to be like a total front. And they're like, no, they're just an opportunist and they're just here for the money.
Yeah.
And they're just here to take care of themselves. And then that creates friction within them. And it was just, again, like doing the like what it does for the Empire, it's also doing for the rebels where within their ranks, you see all of the cracks and the deviations that would be there in organizations or
well, you're dealing with
collectives.
humans.
Exactly.
Bunch of individuals who have self-interests. They might not agree with you idealistically, so they're not going to be like. But they also might notice, oh, well, he's got one vision and he's got another. They're both on the same side, but I don't really care about either one of them, and I'm not sure who's going to win out. So I'm just going to make sure that I look out for me first,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll just jump off whenever is convenient for me.
Right.
I'll just exit stage left. But yeah, it had so much of that nuance in there to be able to accommodate what this type of universe would look like. And like you said, it was on both sides. It wasn't just in the Empire, even though it was. Because in the original trilogy, Empire's very, like, you could call it one note, I suppose, but they all seemed like they were very on board with what Vader was doing.
Right.
And the only dissension you had were among the top ranks of, like, Tarkin and Vader, necessarily. And that was interesting. That provided some interesting tension, but that's all you got.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tarkin ended up dying, and you just have Vader and the Emperor and what their vision is. And then everyone else is just kind of these mindless troops that are detention, essentially. It's like, well, there's just a large number of them. They don't really have any individual thoughts. They don't really care. It's not an organization. It's just soldiers. So this one is like, well, what would the organization above the soldiers look like? What would the hierarchy be? What would people think under this type of rule? If you have this kind of power, how would it corrupt you or not corrupt you?
Mm-hmm.
How much would apathy take over as opposed to actual evil? Or maybe there's some kind of both. Like Deidre, I think, was some kind of both. It's like she didn't think she was being evil at all, but we from the outside were like, this chick is so evil. It's just messed up.
I know. Freaking great. But yeah, see, it's really interesting how, because like you're saying with the original movies, there's no real room to add that kind of complexity to the
No.
rebels and the empire, and it's also just not important because, like you said, it's about the hero's journey. It's about a specific storyline. It's about family generations and that this kind of stuff, good and evil fantasy things. So you can use it within the context of a character. Like, let's say, on the flip side, you're talking about Vader and Tarkin, but you can look at someone like Han Solo, who's not a rebel. He's, on the outskirts of that. He's a smuggler, so he's just out for himself, an opportunist. And then he gets roped into the rebel, force. But like you said, it's also at that point grown to such an extent where, you have some backing and support. Like, this is a real fight.
Right.
At this point, especially after they take down the Death Star. It's like, well, now it's like,
Oh, we got a
it's a
chance.
battleground. Yeah,
Yep.
there's actually a fighting chance here. So that's all fine, but that's just the backdrop for the characters. This show is about that backdrop, right? And so it's almost like the characters become like less important. They're there to just give us a window and an insight into what are the dynamic complexities happening within these ranks.
Yeah. And it does a great job of that. It sets it up extremely well to know, and it's to some extent it recontextualizes what someone like Luke went through.
Mm.
It was like, man, when you really consider what had to have happened in order for the rebellion to exist as it does when he joins it, is like, does he really appreciate? Yeah, he's the rebel hero at the end of the day, but he is standing on the backs of all these people who did get down in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he was able to stay clean because these guys didn't. And so it was a nice, like, because it does kind of add to Luke's character after that too,
Mm-hmm.
of like what kind of complexities come with that and how to recontextualize him properly and not necessarily denigrate him, but at the same time, show him how this could have happened, how this could exist, and how he could finally come and take the last steps to the end
Mm-hmm.
to get to that finish line of fighting Vader and facing down the Emperor and stuff.
Yeah, because even Rogue One, when it makes the effort to do that, it's kind of rushed.
Mhm.
It has to all happen in one movie.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely some gaps where you're like, okay, like they're fighting for the rebels or whatever. But it's still kind of associated with that larger context. This much more personable approach. I mean, like you have, the Empire guy, he gets fired from his job, and where does he go? He goes home to his mom.
Right.
And she's
I need a job.
yeah,
Can you call
basically
uncle, please?
he drinks some disgusting blue milk
and cereal.
and cereal, and his mom is like upset, but she's just like, well, you got to get back in the game. You can't let this beat you down. And she just wants him to have this prestigious job
Right.
in the Empire. That's what she wants.
She's like living her image through him or something.
Yeah,
projecting her aspirations on him.
Right. But even in like those moments, the show gets like so ridiculously like symbolic. Like there's a part where I forget exactly when or how the context is, but he's kind of lost, his position, and then he has like an opportunity to kind of like slick back in, and he's trying to figure out how to make that happen. So he's eating his cereal, but after it's poured, like one of the crunchies falls out, and he picks it up and he throws it into the bowl, and it's like he's back in the game. And I'm like, how is there like something that small? And it's like, oh, it seems like it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, I guarantee it's intentional because you didn't have to shoot it that way. So either it was a happenstance or it was in the script. And they were like, okay, we'll subtly hint at this particular thing. Like he has to go back into the fray of this chaos. It's like, oh my gosh.
They obviously knew what they were doing and what they wanted. So,
Mm-hmm. I mean, you got like torture in this too. Like they straight up torture people. And it's not like it is in New Hope where they get that little droid in with the needle. And it's like,
needle.
No, it's like straight up like horrific torture. And they're like screaming. Like people lose their minds in this show. It's like, sheesh.
Really showing what the Emperor could and probably would do.
Yeah.
Well.
Oh.
Is there anything else that you wanted to go over with this show specifically?
We should cover, like one other thing, and then we should talk about season 2.
By the way, Andy Serkis is in the show, and
he's fantastic.
Phenomenal.
So he plays an inmate. You actually get to see them working in like a concentration camp. But it's all like, it's
sterilized.
Sterilized, and they're just
sci-fi looking.
Building these machines for the Empire or whatever, and they have to stage like an escape or whatever. But the thing with Andy Serkis' character is he's an inmate, but he's kind of in charge of a whole floor, so he keeps everybody else in line, and he's just trying to get out by doing his time. I'll just do all my
Keep your
time or
head
whatever.
down, follow the rules, and eventually they will follow their word.
Right,
Or keep their
exactly.
word. No, they said they'd let me out after this amount of time. They're going to let me out after
And
this amount of time.
without really revealing too much, the Emperor or the Empire is not really going to keep its word. And it's just a
No.
matter of
What? No.
it's just a matter of like seeing though his character development. Like he has a full-on character arc in the span of like 3 episodes. I'm like, how does and he doesn't even get, the whole episode to himself. So I'm like, how does an actor of his caliber pull this off?
Because he's
And
an actor of that caliber.
exactly. And it's like you're looking at all these other shows and these other movies they've done, and it's like they can't even get like one character arc to just satisfy. And his was like perfect. He has that friction of just like, okay, well, this is how I solve this problem. And he pushes back against it really hard until it's like right in his face. And it's like, it's irrefutable now. Like,
Yeah, because he refuses to acknowledge that they might not be telling the truth. He refuses to acknowledge that. He's like, I know I will be out if I just get through this part of life.
right.
If I just serve my time, I leave. That's it. If I screw that up, then I screw myself up. I'm not going to make it out if I do that. So I'm not going to push any buttons. I'm not going to step on any toes. I'm going to dot all my I's.
Yep.
And then there's a moment where he realizes, okay, that's not true. And I know that I've known that wasn't true, but now I have to face this.
Just like Mothra.
Not Mon Mothma. It's not. Just isn't.
Well, they basically never called her that in the show. Maybe they probably did.
Yeah, I'd have to watch back through and really pay attention to what they call it, because like daughter calls her mom, and I think the husband calls her like honey or something. But yeah, I mean, I guess not. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
I will say, I guess, as like a final point too on the show is that they do end it in a way that I think is really satisfying. And it's basically like, it kind of goes back to Luthen's character arc where, you're saying he's like, I got to use the tools of my enemies in this morally gray, and, that's uncomfortable, but I just power through it because I'm trusting that my end results are going to be justified when I finally get to them, right? But then he gets an offer from someone, and when he gets it, it's like he was trying to cover up a loose end. Like, okay, I'll just get rid of this guy. But then that guy's like, well, you can kill me, sure, or you can just point me into the next mission to fight the Empire.
Right.
And Luthen smiles, but it's not like we're a team smile. It's like you just said the magic words I wish everyone under me said. Because then I don't have to feel bad if you die, and you probably will die in the fight against the Empire. So you're just going to be a tool for me. And that was like like that's so gross that it's like,
Right.
the end goal of what you're reaching for is good, but you're just like throwing people away. And he's like, I know, and that sucks. But if I can throw someone away who doesn't care, that makes it much easier. I can swallow that pill. And I thought that was like a really apropos way to kind of close out that particular season. Again,
Yeah,
it was like it wasn't really that concerned about like anything beyond just developing this character and the philosophy of the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, because that character recognized, well, we have to just be tools at this point. Because if we
Right.
recognize ourselves as humans, then we're not going to accomplish this goal. We will lose.
Right.
And not only will we lose, we'll still be tools for the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, which one do you want? Do you want one that's going to lead to a good outcome, or do you want one that's going to lead to just this apathy that we've been in for so long that's going to keep us under this oppressive rule?
Right.
It's a sad realization. Like, I couldn't imagine being in that kind of existence where I have to acknowledge, like, I got to be a tool for good or a tool for evil. And either way, I'm a tool.
Right.
Just to be used or wielded by those that are better or smarter than I am.
Mm-hmm. It was like it's a false reality. I was lying to myself that I could just like be an opportunist.
Yep.
And like that doesn't happen. That's not going to work.
Eventually, it'll catch up to you.
Right.
So,
which is kind of crazy because, it has this great structure where it kind of starts pretty early on with like him in his hometown, Andor. Then he goes on like these sort of 3 different separate arcs. Like you get like a bank heist, you
Yeah.
get like an escape from prison, like Alcatraz kind of thing. You get like just all this crazy cool stuff. And then
Well, and the bank heist thing was part of a different arc, though. That was the arc where he's being recruited. So the bank heist was in there, but that's more of like the testing phase. Because the first 3 episodes are him meeting Luthen and then potentially
yeah,
being
yeah, yeah.
recruited by him, but that was like his test, is going and doing the bank heist. The
Right.
second one is being put in a concentration camp and then his personal development, I guess. So one
Right.
is Luthen looking at him, and then it's him looking at himself, and then the last arc is him deciding what to do with that information.
Pretty much, yeah. And when he's in that like final scenario, so like it basically what I was saying is it starts with his hometown, and then like all of this stuff happens, and then we come full circle back at the hometown again,
Right.
and there's this funeral procession, and like it's just a nice like structure because when they return, it's like, well, now the Empire's got its roots like dug into this place, and they were all thinking that they could like ignore it, but it's just not possible, and now that's becoming painfully clear to everyone. And
Yeah, because it kind of broadened it out, right? It wasn't just Andor recognizing that, or Luthen recognizing it, or Mon Mothma recognizing it. It was all the common people as well.
right,
They were now realizing that they could try and turn the other way as much as they wanted, but eventually the Empire was going to come in and try and push even harder, or press even further.
mm-hmm,
And they finally were like, we can't let you guys step any further than this. And that
mm-hmm,
coalesces where it began,
mm-hmm.
starts where it ended, so that, it's kind of like poetry, so that they rhyme.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to put that sounder in here somewhere.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, even in that, it's like this great moment where the character who dies, they have like a projection of themselves that they pre-recorded, and they're describing like, they're like giving their farewell, but their farewell address is a call to action to fight against the Empire,
Right.
which is like the Empire is standing right there. They're the ones micromanaging this
But
funeral.
they're also forced into a position where they can't turn it off. Like, if we shut this off, she's just going to prove her point, and they're going to react the same way anyway.
But if
So
we let it go, then
they're
they're
going to react the same way anyway.
Right. So they eventually, of course, take the stand of, well, let's just shut it up because
Yep.
they have a big ego and they can't have that challenged. And that pisses off the crowd. But it was this apropos moment. I was
Yeah.
like, sheesh, like you guys are totally missing. They're so tone deaf to how oppressive they are. It's like they think they can just like walk over everybody. It's like such a great depiction of like overreach and actual oppression.
Right. Yeah, and what that
Like
actually
a
could do to
Star
people.
Wars show.
Because then at some point, because you wonder, like, well, how you're under this rule, how do you become so evil? How do you become this thing where you're just embodying just nasty ideals? And this showed you kind of how that could work. Is like, well, yeah, they're in power.
Right.
They don't want to lose that power, and losing that means, if holding on to that power means that you got to overstep a little bit, or you got to hit somebody, maybe get hit back or something. Well, do I want the power or do I not?
I got the Empire on my side.
Exactly. So why do I care?
Yeah, you guys are just peasants.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, harsh realization on both sides.
Yeah.
Great nuance in the show.
It was a phenomenal show. I don't know what to tell you. There's so much good stuff that we extracted and so much more I didn't even get into. Just like we could do a breakdown of every episode if we really wanted to. It's crazy.
Yeah, this was our kind of first attempt at a show. Because initially, like with Skeleton Crew, we tried to do an episode by episode thing, and I was like, this is just too much. Like, we don't
Yeah.
need to beat this thing up each episode.
It was also just not like
It's a-
something we enjoyed, so it didn't
No.
work for that format.
True. But this one, since the second season was coming out and that I relatively liked it, I was like, well, why don't you try it? Let me know what you think, and we'll see if we can do this in kind of a singular episode. Because I think this is worth the watch. And
Absolutely.
as few details as I can give so you can experience it, I think is good. But it's fun to talk about how much this show did, how much it accomplished, and how the heck it exists in the first place.
Yeah.
It's because not only is it actually good in a Star Wars that's, it's headed by Disney, but also it's something that's not quite Star Wars, but exists in the Star Wars universe. So it's just this really strange but fun thing. And I don't know how to quantify it outside of that. But it is a fun show to talk about, and I highly recommend watching it.
Yeah, I mean, my initial impression was that I was like, this just isn't Star Wars, but I can't argue that it isn't good.
I love how you're trying to keep squaring that in your brain,
Yeah.
and you finally just be like, you know what? Okay, fine. It's not a Star Wars show. What is this? And then you watch, and you're like, this is a really good show. It's just got the
Yeah.
Star Wars name attached to it.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, it was just so interesting to me how the brand could be so tarnished and that then plays a role on how we perceive it.
Yeah.
I think actually I remember this coming up years ago. Someone was talking about Halo and Gears of War, or no, wait, was it Halo? No, it was Gears of War, and I think it was Call of Duty, and that was the comparison. They were saying that like Gears of War always does really well for itself, and that's because they wait. They don't just like release a new Gears game like every single year like Call of Duty does. So there's like marginal changes, and then it's the next one over and over and over. So they staled it out. And so with Gears, they didn't do that. They took their time. So it takes like 3 years before you get another
Quality
Gears
over
game.
quantity argument.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of like time and effort that goes into each entry. And, it's like that doesn't always pay off for you, but it is like a testament. It's like they just were like, they were just making it stale because they were all bad and there were so many of them. It was just like, why we need 10,000 different shows? How about just like one good show or like two good shows?
I liked the original format. I mean, maybe you don't need a movie every year, but just the thought of having a Christmas release each year where you knew you were going to get a consistent Star Wars film was like, oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. Yeah. Then you got something you can bring the family to go see Star Wars during Christmas time because everyone's going to be in town. So you're going to have a big crowd to go. And you don't have to worry about like what else is going on that I need to like, because that's the Marvel problem now is that now that it all connects, it's like, well, have you seen the 3 shows that have this, this, and this? And now that you can't understand the movie now because it's not going to make sense. Like,
right.
I don't want to do all that. Also, I'd rather go to the theater and watch a movie than sit and binge a whole show. And I mean, that's probably the argument I have against Andor. Is like, yeah, it has the room to do all that stuff, but should it exist as a show? Should Star Wars have shows and movies mixed together? And I mean, we've had that argument already, but there used to be the format, and Star Wars has such a weird history with that. He starts with 4, and then he's, I think he had a 2-year period between each one, but then he waited forever to make episode 1, and then he makes 1, 2, and 3, and then that is gone forever because the last, I think, Revenge of the Sith was 2003, and then Force Awakens was like 2015. So he has these like huge gaps, and so people build all this anticipation. So of course it's going to have a huge viewing as soon as it comes out because everyone's been waiting for so long. But now it's so oversat. Like I forgot all the shows that existed. It was like Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Mandalorian, Acolyte, Ahsoka.
Yeah,
and then Andor.
So many.
It's just eventually, and that's not to include all the animated shows. You got the Clone Wars, and Rebels, and it's just like, okay.
Right.
Back it up.
Right.
So it's nice that there's a gem amidst all the rubble. But again, like how much you really need to put so much out for one thing to shine?
Again, why is it so hard?
It's like, I'd rather have a movie that was really good and have that once every 2 years or whatever than have just a bunch of crap you got to wade through.
Yeah, wouldn't you want it to be more controlled anyway, so that way you keep everyone's like savoring anticipation, right?
Eventually you will work yourself out of a brand, and I think Disney's realizing that, but what do we know?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It would have been fine to do like Star Wars movies more on the regular, but like their approach was just so awful because they wanted them all to be the same. They wanted each movie to be the same movie with the exception of Last Jedi. And then that one was just like, whatever you feel like. And it's like, well, who's this Joker? Like, why does he get to have whatever he wants for his Star Wars movie? Like, how's that going to work? How does that like appeal to the mass audience?
Also, wouldn't that suck to be the next director? Like, why don't I get that treatment? Why do
I
get
how
all
come
these
I don't get like whatever I want for my Star Wars? So then you
poor
have
Gareth Edwards. He's like, you guys maybe reshoot 98%. He got his whole movie. Everybody hated that.
Yeah, I had to reshoot my whole movie. Why did he get his? I mean, and you look at like Andor, and it's like, well, this clearly benefited from a lack of oversight. That much is profoundly
apparent.
Has
to be. That's the only thing I can think of why that show is the way it is.
Right.
Has to be.
Right. Yeah, because it's the only thing that would really make sense. But in that case, like, again, I don't know if I talked about this before, actually. Maybe I did, but like the approach of doing like some projects that are more controlled and then some less controlled, I think would have been fine. Like that's what I would have
If
done.
they're completely separated, yes.
Yeah, so like I would have done like 7, 8, and 9, but I would have been like, look, I'm monitoring that, and we have a script that we have writers looking over the comprehensive story that we're telling here. We're making sure that it's like really connected with the original trilogy
Yeah.
and an understanding of the prequels and the larger Star Wars lore and all of that stuff. And you shoot it in a way that like is, faithful to those movies or whatever. And then like Rogue One, I would just be like hands off. I wouldn't have made them reshoot it. Be like, look, whatever. I'm just gonna give it a try.
This is the Gareth Edwards Star Wars project.
Yeah, so like
Enjoy.
if we're giving him the movie, we're just gonna let him have it, just like they did with like Christopher Nolan for Batman, and then now Matt Reeves for Batman. It's like it's just his interpretation of Batman. It's a new take on the character and the world. So let's just try it and enjoy that particular iteration. And the two can coexist. It's not a big deal. And so for Star Wars spinoff movies, I would have just said that, but like just or whatever. Like you be very hands offy. Like I want to see them if it does something like really
Yeah, it has to meet
deviate
a
in a
level
huge
of quality. Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be somewhat in line. Like, if you want like an R-rated Star Wars movie, for example, it's like I'm not opposed to it, but I would want to know like why.
Yeah.
You
We
know?
don't need a bunch of nudity and HBO level sex or
Yeah,
anything. But
yeah,
like,
exactly. Because I'd be like, well, I don't know if that.
it
I mean,
doesn't
you
fit the brand.
could, but like that might work better in like a show format, kind of like, or we'd have to market it carefully, kind of like what they do with Deadpool for Marvel, where they
Yeah.
they try to make it very clear that hey, this is like going to be an R-rated Marvel experience. So
Disney is new to the R rating,
yeah,
but I'm not.
oh, please.
Hi, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Oh my god.
I'm going to say all my jokes the same way. Are you ready for a whole hour and a half?
Apparently, we don't like Ryan Reynolds anymore. You're just doing that because I'm irritated by him.
It's
Though.
funny. It's funny to me.
Okay, so what do you want from season 2 of Andor?
Great question. Honestly, I just hope that they did the same thing that they did for the first season. Like, I hope they just said, hey, Tony, just write what you're going to write. We're going to go over there. Just let us know when you're finished. Like,
So you're finished.
I'm not going to say a
Do
thing.
your thing.
And yeah, and then just let them do it. Because, I mean, he's clearly capable. I wouldn't put any stipulations. I wouldn't say there's no quotas or anything. Like, we don't need to have anything specifically in this show. Just make a good second season.
Yep.
That's what. So I don't really care. As long as that was what would happen, then good.
I think that's what I would say too, yeah. So we'll give it a try. We'll be back in a few weeks or whenever the show's finished.
Stay tuned for season 2. Thank you for watching. So you made it to the end of the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear what you thought.